Well, there's an old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Could that be the case with researchers involved in geoengineering, massive projects aimed at fixing the damage humans have inflicted on the Earth? Here to share some insight on that is our own science guy, Seton Hall University physics professor, Jose Lopez. Thanks for joining us today. Always good to have you. Let's talk about this geoengineering. What is that actually?
It's the idea of actually engineering the fixing of the climate change that we're happening. So there's two methods that are applied for that. One method is to reflect more sunlight. And another method is to actually sequester greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, CO2, and trap that in, and with the idea that that's going to reduce temperatures in both cases.
Okay. Now, there's also an element of I guess, increasing oxygenation. Is that right?
Yeah, so what happened actually earlier in July, and we just found out about this about a month ago, is a very large experiment. About 200,000 pounds of iron sulfate were literally dumped into the Northern Pacific. And the idea was there to stimulate the formation of phytoplankton, which is, they're basically like the plants of the ocean. And what they do is they take sunlight and grow and suck CO2 from the environment, from the atmosphere. And the idea there is to catch it, and then of course they die and they go to the bottom of the ocean. So one of the geoengineering ideas is to do something like that, artificially enhance an organism like phytoplankton and use that to sequester. But the consequences of that are unknown and was completely unsanctioned, very unscientific, and people are still debating whether it was really pollution or actually trying to help the environment.
Right. As I understand, this is an industry, the salmon industry. It was a guy who's some multi-billionaire.
Russ George, who's a multi-millionaire, and he thought this would be a good idea to help the environment and to help, but actually might have even hurt the salmon industry there, because by sequestering CO2, you're also creating a larger oxygen environment, which is not good for a lot of fish and aquatic life.
So when private industry embarks on something like this without consulting governments or doing environmental studies, I mean, you guys have to be worried about the impact.
Of course. I mean, we don't know the consequences of it. I mean, the Earth is effectively a living system, and what you can compare it to even like the human body. Why someone gets sick, we don't know. Maybe they just had some bad food or something. And the environment, we don't know what the consequences are of doing something like this. I mean, we've seen the consequences of increasing greenhouse gases, right? We've seen that increase since the 1950s, we know it in the science affectionately as the hockey stick. We see an increase of CO2, and then you go to the 1950s, and you have kind of the incredible rise in that level. So we believe that's why there's such a hot debate about human influence on climate change, and we think we're obviously having an impact. That is not debated by many people, but the natural progression of environmental change and the human effect on it is still a big question mark and hotly debated these days.
Well, we've seen, I know there have been studies on cancers that show an increase with the destruction of the ozone layer. That's part of what doctors have been talking about.
Right. I mean, ozone is a greenhouse gas, and one of the things it does, it protects us from the ultraviolet light. We've been losing that, so on the skin, people get this ultraviolet light, which is bad for their skin, and it causes mutations, which leads to cancer and stuff like that. But actually, good thing about the ozone layer is actually it's getting better. So that doesn't seem to be one of the issues.
So we're reducing the greenhouse.
We're reducing that particular greenhouse. I mean, we were actually destroying it, but that's a natural process. We were destroying it. But now through better aerosol cans and better kind of designs, technological designs, our refrigerators, the fluorocarbons we're using there are more environmentally friendly, are actually reducing that. So the ozone layer is getting better. So we believe, we don't know exactly, but we believe things like skin cancer might go down because of that effect, and definitely the impact of warming due to the ozone layer should not be a case. But the other things, CO2, methane, different things we're throwing into the environment, that's still a big question mark.
Are there other kinds of geoengineering efforts going on around the world?
There's a lot of, it almost sounds like science fiction. There's something going around where redesigning trees. So take a tree and a natural tree, genetically modify it, make the leaves, let's say 40, 50% more efficient at sequestering sunlight and sequestering CO2 and producing oxygen. There's other things like taking boats, basically Navy ships, and going into the ocean and bombarding the environment with ballistic missiles and blowing up and having aluminum oxide and different things that are going to act as mirrors reflecting sunlight. So there's all kind of these, it almost sounds like scientific, but geoengineering, don't let me tell you this is not the solution. You know, I'm not here to mention that, and any scientist you talk to is not going to say, oh, this is the solution. It's really kind of the last resort.
Wow.
If you know, conservation effects, you know, reducing our greenhouse gas emissions doesn't work out, if adapting to these global changes, these climate changes does not help, this is really the last resort.
Wow.
It's going to come down to something almost scientific like that.
All right. Well, Professor, we'll see what happens. Thanks for keeping us up to speed.
Okay, thank you, Brian.